Good morning and welcome to the Chill and Heal Show. I am your host, Chill Girl Chrissy and Alderman Chrissy Cantor. I'm here to fuel your mind, body, and soul with goodness. We will connect, open up, share, be real, be raw. Overcome. I always say let go, let go, learn, and grow together to simply live a happy life. And remember, sharing is caring, and we are not alone. And our segment today is we're going to be talking about the silent drug, which is pornography. And I have an amazing special guest, and he was my first guest in January 26th. 2022. You were my first guest on our radio show, Dr. Williams. And Dr. Williams is a pastor at Faith Baptist Church in Manchester. He's a former cop. He is a master in karate. And he's just an extraordinary man at really helping so many people and doing God's work. And welcome, Dr. Williams. Thank you. Can you share a little bit more about your expertise?
I have a bachelor's in criminal justice, a master's in theology, a master's in clinical psychiatric social work, a master's in marriage and family therapy, a master's in, no, that was the three masters. And I have a doctorate in the area of marriage and PhD work in counseling. Yeah. And I'm a licensed clinical psychiatric social worker in the state of New Hampshire.
Amazing. And you've been married?
38 years.
And your wife is amazing, and she's a nurse practitioner?
Nurse practitioner, yeah.
As well, and you have two?
We have three kids.
Three children.
Well, three adults, yeah.
Three adults.
Yeah.
So, last time you came on, you've come on the radio show a couple times
yeah.
When I used to be on the radio, and we've talked about, well-being and how to chill and heal our bodies, minds, and souls, because you see so many people. And when I had this major incident in my life where I was on the union leader, it happened in April of this past year when I was running for alderman, and this gentleman was sending me awful, inappropriate messages and pictures, and I knew that this was, well, first of all, you know how wrong it is, and I'm thinking, if he's doing it to me, he's doing it to other people, and I needed to go to the cops, and I'm grateful that Chief Aldenberg had his detectives look into this, because he had been doing it to lots and lots of women. There was one other woman that came forward, and we were able to press charges. And now he's in the system of trying to get some help. So he's going to be evaluated. He took a plea deal. I just dealt with this. So it's a journey. And you, as a former police officer and a practitioner for all of this, and understanding, when we think that pornography is, boys will be boys, and it's just something not really that big of a deal, it really is a big deal, and it's really a slippery slope. And I really wanted to dive into, the levels of mental health, right? And how do we really help people, and how do we stop next levels of, you don't go from... you don't wake up and want to be a child molester or, pedophile. You don't all of a sudden wake up and decide that you are going to rape someone. It's a process, and we've got to stop people in the process. And it's our duty to speak up and get help, and help our loved ones get help. So I was just wondering if you could share a little bit about the process, of how it starts.
Of addiction?
Of addiction.
Yeah. Well, addiction begins with belief systems that people have. And when we talk about sexual addiction, we're talking about really broken intimacy. People who have struggled to grow up knowing that they're loved and cared for, and they experience intimacy in all sorts of negative ways. And sometimes many of them have been sexualized. And sexualized doesn't mean just molested. It means growing up. I know one gentleman who grew up in a household where on the coffee table was Playboy and things like that, and it was encouraged. And so it begins to kind of twist the way they think about themselves and about particularly the opposite sex. And it begins to foster, and particularly if you add other issues like anxiety or depression or bipolar, those things can really feed into it. They say that pornography is more addictive than cocaine, and I would agree with that, particularly because you can't walk anywhere today. I mean, if you walk through the mall, the pictures, the images that you see in the stores are pornographic. They're there to tantalize you, to bring sexual messages, especially to our young people. And once you're in that addiction, half of my practice is working with sexual addicts, and it's a very life-altering addiction in the sense that the impact it has on the person, the shame they feel, the guilt they feel, always walking around feeling like that they're deviants, the impact that it has on their spouses, for sure. I mean, you can, any other addiction, whether it's cocaine or alcohol, it's pretty clear that this person has a problem. But with sexual addiction, it falls over onto the spouse too, that their feelings are that they're not adequate, they're not pretty enough, they don't have a nice enough body, and so it hurts them. Not that the other addictions don't, but the line's pretty delineated between your problem and my problem. My problem's putting up with you. And sexual addiction, it becomes your problem is because of my problem not being enough. And so it really, it destroys marriages, and it destroys family, where you see kids who get the messages from their fathers that this is normal, this is okay. Even though they might say it's not, it's one thing when you say don't do something, but you go ahead and do it, and your kids are always watching. And we live in a culture today that is sexually saturated. We have kids.
Movies, everything.
We have kids with cell phones with instant access to the internet. It's so easy for them to get hooked into this stuff. One of the things that I work with a group called FMO, for Men Only. It's a great group of support. And one of the things that they've been looking at over the years, and still haven't been able to bring it together, but is what do you do with these teenage boys and teenage girls who are getting addicted? Because there really aren't any outlets for this. And as kids are growing up in adolescence, the school system's trying to help them to understand sexuality, but sometimes part of the problem is it almost encourages it. And so the kids aren't getting the support in the sense of understanding that sexuality is like dynamite. When used for the appropriate reasons, it's a wonderful thing. But used inappropriately, it can blow up your life. And I've got a couple of young men who are early 20s who, they've been involved in this since they were probably 12, and God bless them. Their struggle is they want to be in a relationship, but they do not want to bring this into a relationship because they know the damage it will cause. And so pornography, when people get involved in it, their world changes, just like every addict. If you're a cocaine addict, all you're thinking about all day is cocaine. If you're a sexual addict, all you're thinking about all day is sexual release. And so now when you look at a computer, it's not a computer that people look at to do work on or to gather information from. Now it's a whole other thing. It represents pornography. I have guys who, part of their job is to work with their computer. And yet the temptation to not work with their, to not do their jobs, but to be scanning porn as they're working. I've had people lose their jobs working for government contractors because they got viruses on their laptops, and when they went to take them off, they saw where they came from, and they lost their jobs. It's once it's in a person's life, it devastates everything. There's no underplaying the devastation that it brings, and what it does to the brain. That constant boost of dopamine and what goes on with endorphins. It just becomes a high, and it becomes progressive. Patrick Carnes, who's done a lot of work in the area of sexual addiction, talks about 3 levels of addiction. He says that the first level involves compulsive relationships, pornography, prostitution, anonymous sex. The things that the culture might look down on, but it's not illegal. But then he says, long enough in level 1, you have a high vulnerability to level 2. Level 2 is exhibitionism, voyeurism, indecent phone calls, sending pictures to people, indecent liberties, bumping into people just to feel their bodies. Level 2 goes to level 3, which is child molestation, rape. And what Carnes says is nobody gets to level 3 who hasn't first gone from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. And that's why it's so important to be stopping at a level 1, to be recognizing that this isn't boys will be boys, or this is a way to help our marriage, or it doesn't help. When I hear some therapists talk about this as a tool to use for couples who are having sexual problems, it just creates bigger sexual problems for both the men and the women, because now they're looking at these images that are staged and that aren't real, and now it's bringing them sexual performance problems because they're looking, I can't keep up with that, I can't match that. It's the tentacles of sexual addiction reach out everywhere. They affect your work, they affect your home, they affect your kids, they affect your relationship with God, in the sense of never feeling worthy to go before God. It's probably one of the worst problems that we're finding in our culture today, and yet it's just kind of shrugged off as not important.
And really, it needs to be, awareness needs to be brought to it. For instance, people were telling me, oh, you should have just blocked him. Oh, you use this as a political stunt. And I'm like, excuse me? I'm like, this is insanity. It's like bringing awareness and accountability to say that this is not okay. This behavior is not okay.
No, and I appreciate the fact that you were willing, and I knew you didn't do it for yourself, you were willing to be an advocate, thinking about all those other people who are going to be affected. Because it's easy for us to say, okay, I can deal with this, I can get over this and move on, and not think about, wait a minute, this is wrong.
Yeah.
And if it's happening to me, it's going to happen to others. And there's the other point too of, and I've also felt this in the way you've dealt with it, caring about the person. Because if this is a level 2 person who could easily become a level 3 person.
Yeah.
My wife was attacked a number of years ago by a man, and he was 19 years old at the time.
Oh my God.
Now, he had to be at level 1 at a very early age, and spent 11 years in prison because of it. So your intervention was on behalf of not just future victims, but also for this person, because if he had kept on going, it would have become progressive, because it always does.
Yeah, and I did know that with my experience in the past, where I didn't speak up about something, and then I felt guilty for not speaking up. But people can be helped, and after the court case, his mom came over to me, and she was crying and she was apologizing, and it broke my heart, and I just wanted to help her. And but I really feel like he took a plea deal of holding himself accountable with probation and doing a full evaluation and following all the orders. So I felt like there was hope for him and his mom, because his mom, it broke my heart, you
Sure.
know. Everyone is someone's son or,
Right. Exactly.
brother and so forth. And we don't necessarily want to be there, we were just talking about generational curses and so forth and things that we struggle with. And if we can help people help themselves, then we can stop the generational curses and traumas that people have gone through and really do better and be better.
That's what I really appreciate my clients in the sense that they want it to end in their generation. Mm-hmm. They do not want this passed down to their children. Some of the young men I work with who, like I said, are in their early 20s, who are at that place where they're not going to have a relationship till they get this dealt with. Mm-hmm. They do not want to cause the pain that they've seen in their own families. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing, too. Whether it's sexual addiction and even what goes on with molestation, people, this idea that if you do something, you can never be cured, that's ridiculous. Now, you have to want something. You have to want mm-hmm. that. And that doesn't mean that treatment takes the place of punishment. If you act out on somebody, you don't have the right to do that. Mm-hmm. And part of treatment is you take full responsibility for what you've done. Mm-hmm. I worked with a gentleman who molested his grandchild, and there were, psychological distortions going on for him. But when he realized what he did, he took full responsibility. He turned himself in. He put himself into therapy. And it wasn't because he was looking for some better deal if he got caught, because the truth is, even when he did, he didn't think he got enough time. Mm-hmm. And is out of prison and doing well, and holding to the routines that have kept him in sobriety from this stuff. But it's, they can all tell you, they can all go back, as Carn says, they can all go back to level 1 behaviors. And the key is you stay away from those. Mm-hmm. And that's what we need to see happening today. Mm-hmm. Excuse me.
And so if someone's wondering, all right, am I at that level? I'm at level 1. What do I do?
Well, let me say this. Level 1 does not guarantee you're going to go to level 2.
Okay.
There are plenty of people who are at level 1 who never go to level 2, so I want to make that clear.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is you don't get to level 2 without level 1. You don't get to level 3 without level 1. When James Dobson, a child psychologist, did a famous interview with Jeffrey Dahmer, mm-hmm. and he asked Dahmer, who killed victims and ate them, where it all began. He said pornography.
Wow.
Because it's the objectification and dehumanization of people. And that's the other piece of it. What it does to the way we look at human beings. Mm-hmm. I had a client who had raped 2 women, 2 young girls. Mm-hmm. And but he had been so saturated in pornography that he had a card catalog in his mind of women's body parts. And so if a woman walked into the room, it's the first thing that would go on in his mind, trying to picture what their body parts look like from this catalog. Mm-hmm. And he couldn't stop it. He just said it's the way I've thought all my life. And there were all sorts of places he couldn't go and things he couldn't do because they were such triggers for him. He's going to have to spend the rest of his life on top of that. Mm-hmm. But it comes with that willingness. And I can say, faith becomes a big part of that. Most of the people I work with, it's their faith that convicts them, that they know that this is not what God created them for. This isn't not how they're to live. They have a conscience about hurting people. And I've seen people go into the prisons and have legitimate conversions and leave strengthened by their faith. But that doesn't take away their problem. Their faith helps them to battle it. And you need every resource you can get. Mm-hmm. Usually when I see people, there's kind of like what I call a three-legged stool. One is a group like for men only. Two is therapy. And oftentimes, three is treating the psychological issues and sometimes the chemical issues of anxiety or depression or bipolar, where the meds can make a big difference, especially for anxiety, because people will use sex to self-medicate when they're feeling anxious. Or in bipolar, where there can be hypersexuality because of too much dopamine to the brain. It's taking that approach of dealing with all of these areas because all of them are affected, and also dealing with the marriage and the kids, and because it's trying to bring wholeness to the whole system.
Mm-hmm. And overcoming that shame.
Absolutely, because shame is what feeds it. Every time somebody acts out, they feel awful about themselves.
Yeah.
And because of that, the next trigger they hit, it's easy for them to say, oh, why resist? You're no good anyways.
Yeah.
And so it just keeps building shame, which makes it easier every time a trigger comes.
So it's exactly like alcoholism, right. Drug addiction.
Exactly.
And it's usually very secretive.
Absolutely.
And so secrets can legit kill us.
Right. And those around us, yeah. And that's the difference with this, though, is a person trying to recover from alcohol. Yeah, he knows I stay away from bars.
Yeah.
I don't bring alcohol into my house. And if he watches that can be helpful. Pornography, it's like a bar around every corner.
Yeah.
It's
everywhere. It pops up on your phone. Pictures and
and it's or just walking down the street and the way people dress sometimes. Mm-hmm. That's not their problem, but for the person, mm-hmm. all of that stuff just becomes things that trip them up constantly. And so they're trying to be sober, and yet they walk into a store. You've mm-hmm. walked through the mall, you've seen some of, whether it's Victoria's Secret or, the jeans companies with, young women, and it just becomes everywhere they go. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think it's tougher here, mm-hmm. And it's tougher on the families, because even when a husband and wife are out and they're walking in the mall and some pretty girls are walking by, mm-hmm. both of them are triggering. Yeah. He's triggering and she's triggering.
And she's feeling like she's not good enough.
Yeah.
And maybe she's been not feeling good enough for a long time, but he doesn't feel good enough either.
Oh, right. I had a guy who was saying he was driving down the road and there was this really pretty girl who was dressing pretty scantily, and his wife said to him, "Did you see that?" Mm-hmm. And he thought, if I say no, I'm a liar. Mm-hmm. If I say yes, I'm a pig.
Mm-hmm. It's like you can't win.
Right, and that's the problem with this. It mm-hmm. just it's always there, and it's always tormenting the addict and their family.
So, if someone feels like they are an addict, because some people don't even know about sexual addiction,
right?
If they feel, can they call you?
Yeah, absolutely. They can call me, and and I don't have the number here. I'm sorry. Rick Cardos, who's in charge of For Men Only.
Okay.
And you can call me for that number.
Okay.
But those are great, and For Men Only are groups that meet, and usually they meet in churches. Mm-hmm. But there are a number of them in the state of New Hampshire, and I think Maine and Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. They do great work. I mean, I can't tell you the lives that they have helped to transform. And I can tell you, Rick Cardos is he's committed his life to this, and it's pretty exciting stuff. I love working with those guys. But yeah, that's the first thing I'd say is reach out for help, and reach out for help for your marriage.
Yeah, because you can overcome this.
Absolutely, it's like any addiction. It's the hardest part is the first part, admitting it and asking for help, and yeah, the rest of it's work too. It's not. I'm not going to say this is an easy addiction to get over, but plenty of people do, and it's neat because when their family, because I'll have all my guys pretty much give disclosure to the people in their family because they already know it, they already suspect it. But when they do that, I've never had anyone come back and say, and I've had men particularly afraid to go to their older teenage daughters or whatever and say, look, I've been struggling with this, and because they're always afraid that their family members are going to look at them and say, you're a pervert, you're sick, and that never happens. They all give them a hug and say, I love you, Dad, and I'm glad you're fixing this and taking care of it, and particularly for their sons when they go to them and say, look, this is what I'm struggling with, and this is you've seen what's been going on. You can't go down this road, and they can, they deal with it as a family, and it blesses them. And in a culture today where there are no real norms, it helps them to be able to see where the appropriate boundaries are for their sexuality.
And boundaries are so key.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
Healthy boundaries. And I got Dr. Williams, pastor. Where can we find you?
Faith Baptist Church, 53 Mammoth Road, right here in Manchester.
Right here in Manchester, right on Mammoth Road, and Sundays at 10:15.
10:15, yeah.
10:15.
Yeah.
Do you call it sermons or?
Yes.
Yes, sermons are amazing. And I've been a little bit of a church hopper, but I always love to go.
We always love to see you.
Yes, I love Faith Baptist Church. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Sharing your expertise and truly helping so many people and doing God's work.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
Congratulations on your election.
Thank you. Thank you. And we are going to chill and heal our community and our country and speak up with kindness. And let's try not to shame, but help people. Truly
Absolutely.
help people. And God bless you and God bless America. And have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.